Good evening, everybody. Hope you all got a warm drink with you as we're back with another edition of Social Confoes. It's Tuesday, 9 p.m., so you know where we're at. And as you may have noticed in the announcement post, we didn't post any guests today because, frankly, it's just the two of us tonight with you guys. And we'll be looking back at the past 2 months. I can't believe it's already been 2 months, Jean-luc. Uh,
Yes.
how the show has been going, and basically, it's a good point for reflection, kind of like a season wrap up, and just to explore on what's next. So, Jean-luc, welcome back to
Yeah,
Tuesday.
I want to give a quick tangent. So it's funny that we started off the show with me on Spotlight and we didn't realize that I was on Spotlight until the show went live. But I do want to give you a compliment because I don't think people know like what the behind the scenes of the show is like and what we're dealing with and like all the but one thing is this show always starts right on time. Like I'm doing different podcasts. And this is like the only show that like as soon as the clock just hits 9 o'clock, the show goes live. And I do want to give you credits for that. Not only that, but also the preparation that goes into the show. And for those of you who are watching who have no idea, for me it's fun because Diego has like a complete notebook, a complete digital notebook of a run through the show of the guest, the background stories on the guests. Everything is completely written down. The scheduling, everything we're scheduling weeks into advance, some cases months into advance. And he actually had to jump out of a session on podcasting just to join the show for today. So my compliments, man. I mean, it's really a pleasure being part of this. Deciding to like, I have to do something at night during the lockdown hours, and all of a sudden to this really getting slowly getting more professional podcast. So shout out to you, Diego.
Thank you for being the accountability counterpart. And yeah, it's funny that you mentioned it. I was actually in another session on, kind of meta now, podcasting on podcasting. And the funny thing here is the guest we had on there and the topic we are talking about hit really home on how we got started because
Okay.
they started one of the topics was how to get co-hosts in, and how do you deal with a co-host, how do you spread the workload. So it was really hitting the
Oh,
notes you just described. And one of the tips was, try to interview a few people, see how it goes, and if you want him as the co-host. And last year we actually had you on as a guest at Casual Convos.
ah.
So
So I got
me,
roped into this. I got roped into this without knowing.
unintentionally, intentionally, kind of, but it worked out in the end. And I gotta
Yeah.
say, it is a pleasure doing this with a co-host. It's it takes grit doing it alone, but being able to share this experience and having someone to bounce off with, elaborate on ideas, and just to keep you accountable and grow faster, I think that's a real pleasure. So happy to have you on as well. But we have Rowan in the
Yeah.
pure section now. Hi, Rowan. Thanks for
So
joining us.
So for everybody today who wants to join in, I'm just quickly gonna pop it up as well. She's looking in from YouTube. So today is a free show in the sense that you can ask any question you want. It is not gonna be an ask me anything, an AMA or something like that. But if you're watching, you want to ask a question about the show, about how we got started, about how things are going behind the scenes, feel free to drop in. It can be something about life or about business or social media as well, of course. But we'll leave some room and try to answer as many questions as come in into in the question section or in the comment section. And for the rest, we do have like a general build up of our show. We will talk about the things that we enjoyed most for the past couple of months, and also some quick fire questions, and hopefully some cool discussions on NFT. Right?
Yeah, and for those of you wondering, stay tuned because it's something really strange going on. Well, not strange, but really shifting the internet right now, especially in the last week. But let's start off with how the past 2 months have been. We started in the first week of January with our pilot session, and before you knew it, we had January booked with some local guests. But what
Yeah.
surprised me most is the traction we had. That by the end of January, we had a lineup of some international friends ready for February. So that was really something I didn't expect to go that way, but it's a good thing for me at least having experienced that. How about yourself?
Yeah, for me, it was more. I think the international guests were kind of. I was looking for a podcast already where we can do such a thing. See, the difficult thing is doing podcasts in Dutch or in English. It's a very hard decision. I saw actually some a friend of mine, Kevin Hadley. I saw him post about a similar kind of podcast that he's going to do, and that's going to be in Dutch. So it's kind of similar to Social Confoes. Try if you translate it in
I
Dutch.
actually saw the pilot today.
Yeah, yeah. So that's really cool because we decided we wanted to go in English, and I think there's definitely a market for doing the similar podcast to this in Dutch as well. So it's really interesting that when it comes to language, you have to make a decision. I made the decision like 5 years ago to try to do more in English. I don't mind doing things in English. I graduated my master's here at a university. I did in English as well. So for me, it's kind of a way to keep my English on a acceptable level, and but also looking towards an international audience, which does. I mean, we should be thankful that most Surinamese people understand English quite well, but you do miss a couple of people who are like, yeah, but why is the show in English? Why don't you just talk Dutch? And then, of course, for our guests, it's great that we do it in English. Otherwise, Ruan wouldn't be able to join us. Jay wouldn't be able to join us. So there are some benefits to it as well that we've decided to put in the show in English.
Definitely agree on that. And for those of you who don't know, the Convos series or the podcast as a whole, starting with casual convos, we actually started in Dutch, but we quickly decided to move to English because, yeah, as Jean-luc just mentioned, it's kind of a decision that you have to make deliberately. And I at least decided to make the switch when how do you call it? When I got some feedback from this was back when I was in New Zealand from some locals there, some friends there, who saw the names and the headings of the podcast in English and started listening. And after the first sentence, we started talking in Dutch, and they were like, "Wait, what's going on?" I was
Really?
interested in this topic. Yeah, so after 2 or 3 episodes with that kind of feedback, we decided, okay, we're having some guests on, and were locals from Suriname, and we asked if we're comfortable talking English. Actually, the episode we did with you was the first one we did in English.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
because we were targeting Hive with that, and we decided to do the
Yeah.
English from then on, and that kind of stuck. And since then, we've been doing English and coming back home here, keeping that international audience in mind and just that penetration and reach, especially now where we can do things remotely, access to an international pool of guests, but also audience is easier than ever. And yeah, English is mostly dominated, and I definitely agree there is definitely a market for Dutch based on statistics that I've seen. There's definitely a market for Spanish. I believe that Latin America has a lot of potential right now if you're speaking Spanish. So just a quick tad on that. So yeah, you gotta make the decision early on. I think the case with Kevin, he's they're mainly focusing locally, so I can respect that decision as well, and you'll reach a broader local audience. But then again, we decided we had this session this weekend as well of identifying who is our actual audience. So yeah, all these things come into play when you decide on how you're going to format the show.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We've mentioned Kevin a couple of times now. I think one of the coolest things about what he did, well, it's not his, but he helped somebody else out, is Arkiwantori. Arkiwantori is a podcast geared towards Surinamese children's books or children's stories. And every week, then they put out a children's story, and my daughter actually listens to it, which is kind of cool. So that's something you do want to interview somebody about. But then if the interview has to be in Dutch, it makes it a little bit more difficult as well. I do want to jump into to Ryan's question. So Ryan asks, are there any plans to start a Surinamese podcast association or a podcasting seminar? Ryan, to be honest, so often we jump to association or somebody that represents the group straight away, which is difficult because it's not necessarily dealing with egos, but everybody is in it for a different reason. So the first thing we did to kind of accommodate this, or the idea that podcasting was becoming a thing, is that we put it in as like a really small segment topic on the social media conference Suriname. So in the social media conference Suriname 2020, there was one session on creating your own show. It wasn't specifically towards podcasting, but everybody involved, from Dion, who does the Lucky Dewey show with me, to Shafeli Whip, who does sport with Shafeli Whip, and Sandrina Hunsel, who does Sunflower. So those were three people that were already involved in kind of making their own show, which ended up being podcasts, and they spoke about it. And there are definitely a lot of benefits. I think COVID helped out as well to realize that we can do these kind of shows without having to have a complete studio, because that was one of the reasons why this didn't happen. We always were convinced that when you do your own production, when you do your own show, it has to be a high value production, and it would have to be in a studio. My first podcast in 2014, I recorded in the studio of Radio 10. Just to give you perspective, I went to a radio station, and I struck a deal with a radio station to produce my podcast. So I would have my guests come to the radio station, I would interview them there, and I would ask the radio station to edit the audio. And that was audio only. There was no idea that we would go live on Facebook and actually broadcast this out. So from that perspective, we've really grown. But association, I think that's a little heavy for where we are right now. It's too niche, I think, in my opinion. You're gonna sit there with 6 people or 10 people, and then half of them can join in. So you're just with the 5 of you. So we'll just have a dim sum on Sunday like we had last Sunday, and that I think that works for now. So thanks also for joining in, Joseph.
Yeah, I got something to add that on that take of yours regarding Ryan's question. Yeah, COVID kind of accelerated the process and actually forced people to. I guess there's been a paradigm shift on how people consume media, but also produce media, and accessibility to online tools, online platforms, launching a podcast has become easier than ever. Like 10 years ago, you had to think of, where am I going to host this? How am I going to edit this? How are people going to listen to it? Now everyone's got a mobile device to listen to. I know Joseph started his own podcast using Anchor. So that's just so the barrier of entry has lowered. And comparing it to radio stations, big studios, even they are forced now to kind of use the same tools we are using right now. And if you look at it, like CNN or the big networks, they use Zoom basically. Zoom has been the main way to broadcast now. Looking at the islands, I briefly checked out how Barbados was doing some of their news, and they were basically doing Zoom as well or something similar. And you know, you see the speakers kind of in their living room, setting a mini studio kind of thing. So yeah, it's forcing people more in the creator space, and that gap has gotten smaller, and that brings opportunity to level the playing field. And what's gonna happen now? I think I don't see necessary need for an association because it's more like uh, going into the topic of decentralized. It's you're democratizing the space
Yeah.
in a sense, the audio space, the video space, and
Mm.
this gives opportunity for creators. The the next challenge I see that needs to be solved is how do these creators actually can they make a living of? Because networks have has the funding to do big productions, but now the costs are also fractionalized, if you know what I mean. So that's something we got to think about. And yeah, curious to see how many new creators they'll pop up in 2021, because that's another thing that
Yeah.
this landscape has shifted into.
I think Anchor is a good one. Before I go into Anchor, of course, Joseph, thanks for sharing that story. He says I got to push while Rahim was on your show. So thanks to goes out to the show. Thanks for sharing that as well, Joseph. Um, I think really Anchor is a game changer. Anchor is a game changer in the sense that it's also owned by Spotify, and as
And
most of you know,
Spotify is available
is
now.
available in Suriname. So yeah, so it's like a trifecta, and at a certain point, I think people are not realizing yet, and this is something we covered in episode 0. Like, unfortunately, the first thing that I got out, like how to make money with the internet, was MLMs. So that's like one of the most frustrating things for me. But I think we're gonna slowly see how these individual productions, that you don't have to go to a big production house to get your production out. It's actually moving the other way around. This week, even somebody from a television station called me and said, like, listen, I have a slot open with this amount of time on television. I want Surinamese creations. What do you got for me? And we're reaching a point that, if I'm talking about the big creators, I mean, there was the Surifatu crew, which was an assembly. It wasn't actually a thing. It was kind of a forced assembly of different local creators. But there were a couple of creators in there who are now so big that for them, offering them space and time, airtime on television, it's like, okay, so how much are you going to pay me? And then the televisions are like, what do you mean? Don't you want to be on television? And they're like, no, my reach on social media is higher. So what are you going to pay me to actually, you're going to getting the rights to my productions. And often these productions are really high level. They're even filmed in HD. So the dynamics is shifting, but also people are going to have to start understanding, like, okay, how can I actually make money out of it? So, like, for instance, my first song on Spotify, which isn't even my song, it's a song I did together with Check and Serge, that now has earned $15 cents. I mean, that's really not that much. But through posting on Hive for 3 years, I've earned over $1,000. So that's interesting in a perspective, like, wait, what, you can that earn that kind of money? And then opportunities are starting to arise and saying, like, wait, should I be a first mover? Like, should I try something that is not really familiar, that people are not familiar? You know, it's legit. You first want to have the legitimization and the proof of stake, of proof of work. But once you have that, can I jump into this as one of the earlier people? So I have a head start, because that's what's happening with social media as well. I'm seeing all these new social media platforms, and the people that jump into them the first, like, go in heads deep and go on fully invest in the platform, they grow quickly. I mean, how quick did people in Suriname get to 100,000 followers on TikTok? Like, that was unheard of. Now with Clubhouse, I mean, I'm talking with people that are like, "Yeah, I'm already on 1,000 followers on Clubhouse," and I'm like, "Wait, wasn't the app just released?" So, yeah, I think that's a really big game changer.
Yeah, and Clubhouse is even still in a closed beta or like iOS only. So they're using that kind of exclusivity, that FOMO effect, to get people on board, and it's quite interesting. Going back to the point of Spotify here being in Suriname, you got this shift now. I'm seeing that the consumer culture is getting adjusted, but as you said, the creators are kind of now becoming an independent media agency in a way. So that dynamic between the big stations and the big agencies is changing, and it's gonna take. I don't think it's gonna take that long, but having that discussion on who's gonna pay who and who's gonna pay what, it's kind of I see the creator economy popping up or coming up more and more as these topics and these subjects come more to light. And you're kind of an independent entrepreneur in that way. So knowing the business side becomes more and more relevant in the space instead of just creating. So I see opportunity there for people in the business space, and plug to Joseph there, who's kind of doing this, kind of matching with these creators to have a teamwork and kind of monetize their content in that way, or how can you bring value from your creations to an advertisement campaign, for example? Is it even necessary to have an advertisement campaign? Where's that authenticity level of you as a ambassador of a product or a brand? So these topics are going to be more relevant than ever.
It's also about how much leverage do you have, like the arbitrage. Because for instance, Ruan says, like, yes, the press in Barbados has been operating remotely to press conferences. We do that in Suriname as well in some cases. I 2 weeks ago did an interview for ATV where I was here, like in my home, and I was being interviewed by the TV station as well. So the quality was kind of, I did have some moments that I was like, yeah, I wish the quality was better. But on the other hand, it's possible now. Marlon, correctly, just like Clubhouse. And then what I really want to go into is what Devin is saying about they're selling invites. So um, it's getting to a point that people are using this arbitrage where they're like, okay, I can get something for free, but people are willing to pay from it. So let's just use that leverage that I have. To take it into perspective, when Texas Hold'em poker was blowing up, I had a friend who kind of all he did was he went online at night and he played Texas Hold'em poker with people that have a lot of money and wanted to learn Texas Hold'em poker, and he would make a couple of $100 a week just from playing poker with really rich people who didn't know how to play poker. And then sometimes he would win events and he would get seats to bigger tournaments. And he would actually sell off those seats to bigger tournaments. And that was kind of the leverage that he had. He didn't want to go to the bigger tournaments because there were better players and he wouldn't win. But he decided to leverage the tickets that he had for the bigger events and sell them off. So these are kind of things that are really new in the space. And what I'm a little bit worried about um, is how the governments are going to deal with it, or the bigger organizations who kind of like the controlled space. We're seeing it like with COVID and how we're dealing with COVID. A lot of times, the governments don't have a clear view how to deal with these kind of new kind of organizations or brands coming up that don't go according to the rules, and there is no legislation yet. There's not even like a guideline yet, like how you can create a win-win between an influencer and the government. And while the influencers are being used now in campaigns more and more, and they are understanding it, we're going to get to a point that there's going to be a company and there's going to be somebody working for the company, and the person working for the company has a bigger brand than the actual company. And that's just is there are just issues with that. Like there are issues that you can't explain at the moment. So we're in a very new space when it comes to the next steps.
Especially bringing from local to global, because having access to an international market is even easier now, especially for creators. Not looking at tourism, not looking at the mining industry, but the creative industry. um, you got illustrators selling their artwork from to someone all the way in Singapore, in the other world. So yeah, as you said, the government's having a tough time keeping up with that. How do you even track income like that? How do you even measure the impact that that has on your local economy? Because it's an influx of cash. So it goes bigger than that. And speaking of influencers, if you look at it on a global level, we kind of talked about this weekend. You got people like Elon Musk that basically have more power than the United States as a whole with a single tweet. So we are treading, like, with globalization, some very unknown waters. And yeah, it's I don't know where that this is going, but that dynamic that a single individual has more power than a collective organization says something of the society we're in now.
Yeah. Yeah. And like it's like Joseph was mentioning, like Facebook groups are making a killing of dollars. We had a big discussion in one of my app groups, which is kind of a more entrepreneurial e-business entrepreneurial WhatsApp group. They want me to move to Signal. I'm refusing to move to Signal until a large part of the Surinamese population actually commits to it. Uh, but we got into the commercial policy for WhatsApp for Business. The commercial policy for WhatsApp for Business, it's terrible. It's really terrible. It's useless. You can't do anything with it. You're not allowed to sell streaming services on it. You're not allowed to sell adult content on it. There are so many restrictions on WhatsApp for Business when it comes to commercial policy. It's and people are gonna go off grid and use platforms that we don't know about and the government doesn't know about. So we're kind of the control. There's no more control. You can't control these kind of things. And I quickly want to jump into a question that Gregory is asking: do you wear pants during Zoom calls? I'm always dressed fully when I get into these kind of shows, Gregory. And the reason for that is, in some cases, I might have to get up. I do have the safety latch, which is this thing here, so I can just turn off my video whenever I want to. I got that from Social Bakers during a conference. I kept a couple of them. It's really good tool. Just a small slide that I can use. But when you're in calls, I mean, you should treat it as a regular call. You should treat it as a regular show. You should be prepared like it's a normal show. And of course, yes, I'm not wearing any long pants with socks and shoes. I'm wearing shorts now, but I am prepared. I mean, I'm wearing something that I would usually wear during an interview. So to put that into a perspective.
I'm actually wearing shorts, but yeah, I have the, the standard
Yeah,
setup now. So I always put
yeah.
on this jacket. So if anyone's noticed, it's a recurring look. So it kind of sets the mood. It's like a mental switch. Okay, now we're going to podcast mode. So just little hacks to help productivity, but that's something you gotta feel out for yourself on how that works for you. But agree with Jean-luc. To avoid embarrassing situations, yeah, take precautions.
And this is practice, so one of the things that happened earlier last year when we just started, because I had to switch completely. I would always go to the office, and now all of a sudden there was a lockdown for 2 weeks, and it took all the stuff from the office, the backdrop, the lights. I had to figure out which table was best to put into my actually, this is my office space at home. So I've had when we build the house, I had a separate office space, and I never used the office space. I Every January I would make a video, and this is when I'm gonna use my office, and this is what I that went on for years. And then when COVID came, I just had to use it for my office. And now I finally have kind of like a setup. It's still a mess. If you would look around here, it's terrifying. But I put up, and then when I started giving lectures, I have had lectures where I had my son sitting crying on my lap, and I had to turn my audio off and my camera off because I had my son just crying on my lap because he refused to accept that I was at home and not with them, putting them to bed. So you have to imagine, like, these kind of things, they take time. You're not gonna instantly find the right way to work or to do things. I also wanted to wear my Udu glasses. I made special Udu glasses for my social media productions, but unfortunately, if I put them on, the lights
Yeah, the
reflect
reflections.
directly. So I had to move away from that as well. So these are kind of challenges that you really go through when you first started out. And we also started with Zoom in the beginning, and then we realized that there were better softwares around to broadcast the show.
So just a short segue or like a detour on platforms and tools for creators. Yeah, we started on Zoom, but the thing is, the situation we're in now has forced a lot of platforms to up their game. Zoom has had to up their game. If you look at Discord in the past 6 to 12 months, they immediately implemented video. They up the way communities are managed. So the development cycle of new platforms is so rapid that maybe in 6 months' time we won't be even using StreamYard if there's a better service that gives us, for example, separate audio tracks for every individual that we don't to just increase production quality. There are already several of these platforms which I tested the last 2 weeks, but the only gripe with them is one of them doesn't have the live stream option. So in that regard,
Okay.
StreamYard is
Uh,
still win.
okay.
But the great thing is they record your audio separately, locally,
Yeah.
and then upload it. But the thing is, it uploaded this progressively, and with the upload speeds we have here, it just destroyed the actual interactive experience during that session. So it's great, but yeah, these companies are coming up with solutions. So if you're thinking of starting something like this, keep an open mind to different platforms because the space is so dynamic that there's no one way to do it. You just gotta experiment and have an open mind on that. But having said that, I think it's time for some, before we go back into the comments, let's bring back a segment that we haven't done for a while, Jean-luc. Some rapid fires.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
I
Sure.
think, yeah, just a little fun for the audience to, get to know us a bit more, some tricky stuff. If you guys got questions, drop them down as well. But yeah, let's go for it. Either a rapid fire A or B or just a single sentence answer. You want to go
Okay.
first?
Sure. Well, okay. Let's start easy. Uh, ketchup or mayo.
Ketchup all the way.
Okay. Okay.
So, last book you read.
Sorry.
The last book
Let's
you
book
read. Yeah.
finished reading or
Let's go with
currently
currently.
reading.
Yeah, currently reading.
Currently reading. Okay. I don't have it here anymore. Or do I? No, I don't have it here anymore. That's known by Mark Shaver. I haven't finished it actually. I'm still
Okay.
on the track of finishing that one. So known by Mark Shaver. That's it's a really interesting book.
Okay. Add
It
that to
talks a
your
little
reading
bit
list,
about
guys.
yeah. No, it's for me really personally interesting. The difference between being famous and being known is a very interesting concept. Okay, so dim sum or sushi?
Ooh. Just because of the local situation, I'll go with dim sum. But
Just because of the
overseas,
local situation.
but
No, no,
overseas,
no,
I
that
prefer.
doesn't. No, 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 that doesn't count. You have to give one answer. It's just one answer.
Okay, we'll take dim sum. We'll
Okay,
take dim sum.
okay, fair enough.
Um, current open browser tabs besides StreamYard.
Current, okay, current open browser tabs, zero. There's a story behind this, which is a little funny. Is for some reason I have some connectivity issues between Chrome, my mic, and my headphones. So there's a connectivity issue between my mic and my headphones. If I plug in my headphones first and I plug in my mic, my MacBook restarts automatically. So I have to make sure that always to first do the mic and then the headphones. And also, if I would go like to Facebook now to share this live stream on my personal profile, I would be frozen and Diego would start panicking because he would be alone today. So
No,
for that reason, I don't have anything open, which is weird because when we started using StreamYard, like in the beginning, I could go on Twitter. I could actually put Twitter elements, but I think that was still on Zoom. So maybe that's the difference. But for StreamYard, for some reason, StreamYard with Chrome, that connection, I might have to change completely to Brave at some point. So I do think that I have to do that. So that's an it's an
why
interesting
haven't you
one.
done that yet? But yeah, anyways.
We can't go into details
Yeah.
about that. Sorry about that.
All
There
right.
are already a couple of rapid fires in the comment section, but I'll do one more.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's do one more each and then
so
go to the comments.
okay, so do you want to do the more difficult one or the more interesting one?
What's the difference?
The difficult one is gonna give you a harder time deciding, but the interesting one gives a story to continue talking about after we've done the quick fire.
Okay, let's go interesting.
Okay, so would you rather lose your sense of smell or all the technology that you use currently?
Oof. Hmm. Interesting. I'll go losing sense of smell. Here's my take on this. Losing
Okay.
sense of smell. Okay. I'm not a biologist or human anatomy, but bear with me. So usually people who lose one of their senses enhance the other senses to a certain
Oh wow.
degree. So I would smell. I wouldn't mind sacrificing smell to enhance one of my other senses to have an edge over whatever the case it may be. Better hearing, better sight. Um, yeah, and I think we're at that stage in the technological life cycle that there is a technological solution or something to complement what you're missing. That's my take on that.
Okay, if you don't mind, I'm quickly going to jump into this because this all started with socialnomics, which is a video that's being made every year, and all of a sudden, one of the topics was that our generation would rather lose a sense of smell, or a very big portion of our population, especially our generation, would rather lose their sense of smell than their technology. So that's how it got started, which is really weird, but that's how it got started. And then with COVID, like people actually losing their smell due to COVID, it became even a more interesting topic. I will say this: my wife got COVID. She lost her sense of smell, and yeah, a couple of things. I won't say too proudly, but a couple of things. Uh, she can't really smell, so the she couldn't smell like the garbage bin. She can't smell like when our son did a number
Oh,
two. She couldn't smell the food like when the food's ready. So these are kind of things that we don't consider, and you're saying like there's a solution to it, but on the other side there's also not really a solution to it. So I thought it was a really interesting case, but you get one more rapid fire before we go to the comment section.
yeah, sure. Talking about technology, so since you can't use your laptop, let's go to your phone.
Ooh.
Yeah, so social media is distracting on the phone. So let's do the counterpart. What's your go-to productivity app on the phone?
Okay, so here's the interesting part. I have two phones. Um, this phone does not have any social media apps on them. This is my main phone. It does not have Facebook. It doesn't have Twitter. It doesn't have Instagram. It doesn't have TikTok. It doesn't have LinkedIn. It has nothing on it. Only calling and WhatsApp. And WhatsApp, I'm desperately trying to get WhatsApp off this phone. I'm trying to get WhatsApp to this phone as well because this is where all my socials are on. But this phone doesn't have, you can't call on this phone. So that's kind of how I try to distinguish between the two. So do you want to talk about the phone that has social media or the phone that doesn't have social media? I'm trying to figure out because Diego froze out for a second. So while Diego is reconnecting, well, like the story I'm saying, it's like I have one phone which is specifically for calling and one phone that's specifically for social media. So this phone doesn't come out until after my work is done. Or and that's kind of a way to keep it kind of to don't to not to get distracted. So I actually don't have productivity apps on my phone, because having productivity apps on my phone will result to me being unproductive because I'll do something else. So Diego's popping back in, and Diego, you should tell us what's going on. Can you hear us already?
I just had a power outage, so I'm on my phone right
Oh,
now. But it just came back 5 minutes ago, a minute ago. So I'm rebooting the computer since I'm not on a
okay.
laptop. So if you give me 1 minute, I'll be back in the desktop session. But I kind of got your answer. You're not using productivity items on your
My
phone or apps.
as soon as soon as I go to my phone, it's being unproductive. So the only thing that I think it's somewhat indirectly productive is I play chess on my phone. I think, and that's actually time consuming, but I do think it serves a benefit to my general skills. So aside from the quick fire questions, I'm quickly gonna go through the comments that we've missed so far. So Gregory joined in. He says the audio and video is great. So thank you for that. Joseph says I will definitely monetize in the future, either my own product, affiliate products, or sponsorship. So this is something that we don't talk enough about. So we'll definitely put in a session this year where we talk about monetization of a brand, because there are a lot of monetization options, and it's good to know that not all the monetization options work for everyone. um, I would rather have individuals have the power instead of governments. Yeah, this is on paper, Gregory. I love this idea, and in practicality, it's not really pragmatic. Trust me. Too many voices, too many leaders on a ship. It doesn't always go according to plan. And yeah, then somebody mentions, but what if those individuals eventually go into politics? Uh, Politics is just politics is everywhere. It's not just when we talk about politics, we talk about the politics in the government, but politics is everywhere. So yeah, that's part of it as well. Diego's already reconnecting. Tefan, yeah, just using a Udo frame, that's not gonna work for me. It's too expensive to just have an Udo frame with all the glasses in, or at least a separate Udo frame. What are you guys eating tonight? Of what have you, Diego? You want to jump into that question? Diego, your audio is a little bit off at the moment. Um,
Yeah. How's that sounding now?
yeah, it's better. It's a little loud, but I think for the rest, it's good. Um, So the double phone. Okay, so this is from Marlon. Whoa, that's getting two phones. The double phone effect is, I think, it can be very productive. I think the biggest problem I have with having two phones is that most people still send me
I'll be back in
WhatsApps.
1 minute.
Yeah, most people still send me WhatsApps on my private phone, which can be a distraction when I have to work. So I think that's the only thing. For you guys who are watching it now, I'm not gonna jump into the quick fire questions before Diego goes back. So I'm gonna slowly go around all the comments. Technically, a Nokia 3310 would be a perfect phone as your main phone. Actually, it does. Actually, it does. And Stefan, you're gonna have to fill me in on the perfume the movie, because I don't know about that. And then one more from Saf. I think the government is figuring out the current situation for be moving into crypto. So that's also
Yo,
an interesting thing.
come
Yes,
on
this
now.
sounds a lot better. This sounds great. Okay,
Okay,
so
yeah.
Diego, are you ready for the rapid fire questions? Because
One
we've got a
second.
lot of them. Okay.
Yeah, I just realized I had another headphone on, so that was why I wasn't hearing anything.
Oh,
So, yeah, excuse my hopping in and hopping out, but those things
yeah,
tend to happen when you have unexpected situation. Just gotta deal with
yeah.
it. But
I
yeah,
don't think
let's.
I don't think people realize that you had a power outage until you mentioned it. So, okay, so let's start with the first one. The first one was, what are you guys eating tonight?
I actually have no dinner as of this moment, so probably make some sandwich with peanut butter in a bit.
Okay. Okay, I had cassava fries with greens and fish, actually. Um, Roti or chow mein? Oh, this is a tough one. Wow.
Ooh, roti.
I'm not sure.
I already took dim
Like,
sum, so roti on this one.
yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, this is a tough one. This is really a tough one because if you would ask me if you never had roti again or never had chow mein again, that would make it really difficult. Ah, screw it. Chow mein, you can still have bami, so I'm going with roti as well. Um, Illustrator versus Photoshop.
Yeah, I
Oh,
think that's
I
it.
know.
Illustrator.
Yeah, I'm not that good with Illustrator. I have to go Photoshop. Comic Sans or Helvetica? Really?
Really, really.
Oh my god!
I, I
Ah,
I'm not even gonna answer this one because
you have
coming
to. You have to
from
choose.
Gregory, anyone with a sense, anyone in the design space knows this
Oh
question
my
is
god!
blasphemy. So you already
Oh my
know the
god!
answer, Gregory. So I'll leave it at that.
This is just choosing between two evils. This is. Um, I'm gonna be honest. You can do a little bit more with Helvetica. I'm just gonna be honest. So I'm gonna go with Helvetica. Devin said, "Don't do this, Gregory. Don't do this here." Okay, Scrum or Kanban?
Actually, have don't have that much experience in Scrum, but I'd go with Kanban.
Same here. I mean, I've only been taught Kanban. I haven't been taught Scrum, so that would be unfair. Rajiv says both. Seth asks, Jean-luc, which phone would you choose? Okay, but this is a very open question. So are you gonna give us two phones to choose between? Because the short answer for me here is, and people hate me for saying this, I've been using a MacBook for more than 10 years. So for the past 10 years, more over 10 years, I haven't touched a laptop that's a different brand than Apple. But when it comes to phones, I prefer Android. I just prefer for my phones, I prefer Android. I don't know why. For when it comes to user friendliness on a laptop, I can't work with uh, anything else than a MacBook. And it kills me because compatibility issues are huge. But for phones, I prefer Android.
Actually, I respect that. Not very common combination.
Yeah, yeah. I want to have the benefits of both. I mean, like people that don't have a MacBook don't understand how awesome it is that you can just flip your MacBook. You can just close it, throw it away, open it up again. There's never any glitch. It never breaks down. It's just you open up and you can start working straight away. There's no 10,000 uh, installs that you have to do or updates that you have to do. It's just pure pleasure if you have a MacBook. People don't understand what a pleasure a MacBook is. And then on the other side, like I'm not willing to pay for apps. I'm sorry. I'm just not that type of person.
All right, fair enough. I gotta say though that Windows 10 has had significant improvements experience-wise. So
I'm
um,
not talking about the
yeah.
operating system alone. I'm talking about the computer as well.
Uh, all right, all right, all right. So do we get
Yeah. So
any
there's
last
there's
questions
one
left?
more. Yeah, one more question from Gregory. Where is Suriname lacking the most? Is it economics? Is it society? Or is it simply personal issues?
I don't, as a whole, as a whole country, I don't think these questions can be answered that simply. And because even answering it with a simple answer would just be a bias towards your personal circumstances. So yeah,
I
um, it, Yeah, Jean-luc, if you
I,
dare to
I can
touch
answer
it.
this. I can
Yeah,
answer this one. Where Suriname is lacking most is population. We're
still.
just too small. We're just too small. We need a bigger population. And it's weird saying that. It's weird like saying like, okay, so the actual solution to getting ahead is actually making more children. That's the best way for us to do it. And also more educated people making more children because it goes completely against the concept. And I'm gonna go off topic here, so I'm just gonna stop there.
You mentioned population. I want to touch on this because we did this last
Yeah,
weekend when we were
yeah,
extrapolating data to do some groundwork for the podcast. Um, this the population aspect was something we hit really quick because
yeah.
we were trying to identify our audience. So we did a quick cross, I guess, extrapolation on interests that people have based on Facebook data and some other data. So you may have seen a post that Jean-luc posted with some influencers, some business brands, some personal branding, finance brands. And I think it was Elon Musk was one of the results we searched, and he had
We
one of the
thought was
most.
biggest.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think compared to him, the only ones that really popped up that were really big as well were Tony Robbins and Oprah Winfrey. I think those Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, and Tony Robbins were kind of the biggest ones. And then especially Tony Robbins had a much older audience, like a lot of people above 30. I think 50 over 50% was over 30. So that's kind of like the old school kind of motivational. And then of course Oprah is a legend in her own right. And Elon was just surprised that he was that big.
yeah. So if you look at the cap local, I guess target that we can reach is maybe 5,000, maybe 2,000, and we were kind of struck by that number, and that kind of enhanced or validated our decision to I think English for content locally is the right way to go because you could reach more people and influence a wider, I guess, audience or reach a wider audience. So that's some behind the scenes that you guys may not know, but we're really considering.
Yeah. So that's why of the reasons why we're looking a little bit broader as well. I mean, there will always be a little piece of Suriname in the podcast. We'll always have tidbits where we go back to Suriname, compare it to Suriname. That will always be the case. But we're also looking like a lot of things that we're gonna talk about in the next coming 2 months. They're like a handful of people doing those kind of things in Suriname. And they don't always want to talk about it. They don't always feel comfortable talking about it because then all eyes on them. It's kind of a big fish in a small pond kind of situation because if you've done NFTs and you've made NFT art and you've made over a couple of $1,000 from selling digital art, it's like you're already an anomaly in this space in Suriname. So it's kind of all eyes are towards you and you don't necessarily want that. So Stephanie also adds, thank you for dropping in again, Stephanie. So there is a shift in what people do as jobs, like creating and influencing us. There seems to be a gap between the generations in terms of understanding the shift. What needs to happen to be a more smooth transition? Stephanie, the funny thing is, this transition has never been smooth. Like, we've transitioned from a pre radio era, a pre television era, to a television and a radio era. It's never been a smooth transition. The easiest way for me to explain to some people is how it works is that basically in the 90s, everybody wanted to be a movie star. Everybody wanted to be Leonardo DiCaprio, because it was like, oh, this is a big movie star, and I want to be a movie star, and I want to be able to get the girls. That was kind of the concept behind it. And now it's kind of being, I want to be a YouTuber. So anybody that's the age of 6 to 10 that says, I want to be a YouTuber, basically it's the same as we would say in the 90s, I want to be an actor. And then what you start to realize is that people go out there to become an actor, but he ended up being a director, ended up being a cameraman, a director of photography, ended up being part of the production company. And that's also kind of what's happening in the online space as well. Some people just become cameramen or editors for bigger YouTubers and go behind the scenes because they want to be in the scene, because they love the scene. They think that's what it's supposed to be and what it's about for them in their life. Some people go out of it because they don't really fit, and some people become really big, and a lot of people don't know who those people are, and until they realize that they've just been in the scene and they've been doing the same thing. And then where the biggest difference, of course, comes in is that right now it's becoming more and more decentralized, and there's a lot of leverage for personal brands which wasn't there before. And a personal brand, I think, a personal brand 5 years ago would be, or 15 years ago would be like Richard Branson. Richard Branson would be the person who most people would look up to and say like, wow, that's a real personal brand. They built that company. But now it's even like I look at David Dobrik as an example, and I'm like, wow, this is this 20-year-old guy who buys a house, which is worth probably a lot around 4 or 5 million, and has his own podcasting studio in his house. So that's kind of where we're moving towards. Suriname, Gregory, lacking creative developing technologies, we lack the population to have a big enough market that it would make sense for those investments. And I think that really helped us is that because of COVID, we are accepting technology which is a little less advanced. But I quickly want to jump into it as Diego is out again. Um, just to give you in perspective, I think 2 or 3 years, no, yeah, sorry, 3 years ago, interviewed, I did an interview with Chris Brogan. And Brogan is somebody who has been with social media marketing from 2005, from the early ages, even before then. And I asked him like whether or not we should go live a country that has doesn't have the proper internet connection. And actually, what Chris Brogan told me is like, if you don't have a good enough internet connection, just film the content and then post it online afterwards. Don't go and post videos with crappy internet connection because people are going to move away. They're not going to stay, and you're going to lose your audience. And that really struck me because for at least a year, I stopped doing Facebook Lives because the internet connection wasn't good enough. And we're kind of lucky with this show that aside from, I think, the second episode, we've had pretty good internet connection. And I don't think the show was possible even a year ago. That's how much of a difference the technology has grown. And somewhere to answer Gregory's question, developing technology only makes sense when you have a big enough population that can actually afford that technology. And yes, of course, in some cases, the technology is already there, but the service providers are just charging too much for it. But in some cases, the service providers are not actually able to make a profit because the population in Suriname is so small. And Rowan contests to it that I think the population is a Caribbean issue in general.
And
So yeah,
that's where internationalization comes in. Um, Not just thinking of a solution for locally, but regionally and globally. And that's how tech companies are basically taking over markets. And that being a good thing or a bad thing, it depends on the context you put it in. But yeah, that's how I see you got to scale regarding that. But yeah, I had another power spike, but I'm back now. So let's move to the last few things. We're hitting the hour mark. If there are any more questions you'd like to know from us, drop them down, and we'll go to the final part. Just what you can expect from the, I guess, next month or two, what we're looking to cover, I think Jean-luc briefly mentioned NFTs, and we
Yeah,
mentioned this in the beginning of the episode as well.
yeah,
So some of you have heard of it, some of you may not, but this is in the tech space and especially in the art and collector space.
yeah.
It's really
Collectors,
picking
because
up.
it's also
Yeah,
in gaming. Yeah, it's
yeah,
also in gaming.
it's really picking up traction. So briefly, what are NFTs is basically an application or a utility based off of blockchain technology, and that's why you see the current surges in the cryptocurrency space, and more prominently in the last week or two, the NFT space. So we are elaborating with some people to share some insights on that as well. And once we get that in stone, you'll be definitely the first to know, and you'd be surprised to how or who may be behind these moves.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting to mention, Diego, that next week we go in a little bit into leveraging social media and new social media platforms. I think that's without giving away what we're going to talk about. That's like a general introduction, and the week after we're moving a little bit more towards the emotional, the psychology behind marketing in general, and I think then we're slowly going to move towards of either financial topics or crypto related topics. Not too much. I don't want to feel like at a certain point that we got into a crypto show. There's also one thing that we should mention that is a little bit of something that happens when you start scaling the show, is that at a certain point you come to certain guests that can't make themselves free on our regular programming, that aren't available at this time that we're regularly doing the show. So that is for now a challenge as well. For now, those guests are on hold, but of course, there are a couple of guests that I really want to interview, but are unfortunately not available on this time slot. So we'll still have to figure out how we're going to do that.
Speaking of guests, if there's anyone you think you'd be want to hear from, considering the scope that we're covering, and you know someone, or maybe help us reach out, feel free to drop suggestions, even topics in general, and we can find the people who are specialists in those fields. So that's the way we're trying to, keep producing or bringing in quality content and also knowledge, valuable knowledge, to give you guys the current state of developments in the world, in a way.
Yeah, but don't ask us to bring Elon Musk or Gary
Yeah.
Vaynerchuk as a guest. Just don't do that. You know. Uh, I might be able to pull off some surprises, but that's a little bit a little bit far fetched. Um, so there are a couple of suggestions. There are a couple of people that still want to get into the quick fire. So let's do the last couple of things. First one was by Saf is there's a lot of fear of the unknown among the older Surinamese generations. I wouldn't say it's just the Surinamese older generations. I think there may be a little bit more than in other countries, but I think that's a general issue. A question from Gregory that's being asked is why do you do podcasts? What's the goal? What's the end goal with this? Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Diego, as well?
Yeah, I'll touch on this. End goal, there is, maybe I'm saying it wrong, but there is no particular end goal. The thing is, actually, correct, we started this 8 months ago. So I'm
So
gonna
he's
read.
trying to
Wait,
figure
wait,
out
wait. Yeah,
why am I into this? Why am I doing this? No, just kidding.
I'm gonna redirect this to you
Yeah,
on our next Capital Convos conversation. But
nice.
for now, why I'm personally doing it, one, it was a way for me to, talk about topics that were in my mind, but also having people to soundboard of, having these constructive, deep, deeper level conversations, and just a way to archive your thoughts. I think Naval Ravikant said it. It's a way to compartmentalize your thoughts, have it in a way that you can structure what you're thinking, but also a way to archive it. And if someone else sees value in it, that's a bonus. So
Document.
it was a very personal reason at first. But as the show has grown, as we've had, I guess, some returning loyal listeners as well, we're giving it more structure. And there is lots of potential in this medium, this space, as well as how the creator economy is rising. Um, the best time to have started a podcast was probably like 10, 15 years ago, but the next best time is now. Because even now, I can tell you, it's still a really, really chaotic space. People still don't understand the analytics that go behind it. People still are trying to figure out what influence it has on communities, on individual behavior. The majority of podcasts are now in English. So I already mentioned before, the Spanish market, there's the Chinese market that you can potentially penetrate. But bringing that back to Suriname, there is no other, from what I've seen at this level of content being produced locally, not taking the ones that currently produce their own shows for granted, but on an international scale, trying to get yeah, people from different parts of the world into topics that play a role here, but also how we can reflect that in that part of the world. And that's what we're kind of trying to bridge is bringing the global local and vice versa.
So it's funny that you mention it because I interviewed Pat Flynn in 2018. Again, don't ask me to get Pat Flynn as a guest to the show. But when I did a short interview with him, he still told us like, "Hey, it's early. Like we're not there yet. The saturation for the podcast market, it's far from being oversaturated. There's still so much space to be discovered. I'll probably link up the interview. I still have it somewhere, so it's easy to link up. But I think it's even more so now true in 2021. And I think what's the goal? I think the goal will constantly change. The goal for me personally is to document, not to create. But it helps that I create, and it also helps that we get guests in that I know they bring value, because that's one of the things that I do want to do. For me, it is a way of getting people with value and bringing them to the Surinamese audience, to have people in Suriname have the opportunity to have personally customized experiences with international professionals and experts, to get a broader perspective as well, because we tend in Suriname, we tend to live within the borders of our country. We kind of sometimes forget that there's a bigger world outside of Suriname, and I do want to push the boundaries on that a little bit as well. So Diego, Star Wars or Star Trek?
uh, um, I'll go with Star Wars on this one.
I'm sorry, Marlon, you're gonna hate me for this, but I'm not gonna jump into this because I'm actually not a fan of either. Anthony Nesty Sport Hall or National Indoor Stadium? At least
Uh,
I think that
yeah.
Gregory means that. Yeah.
Nis? Yeah, sure. Let's go with Nis.
So when it comes to pronouncing it, I'll go for Nis, but I do feel it's the Anthony Nesty Stadium. So I do want to give it the name of Anthony Nesty, if that makes any sense. Ryan wants to thank us for engaging with the audience. Thank you, Ryan. We appreciate you guys being so active in the comment section. I think that's one of the best parts about this show. So we want to really thank you guys as well. Pre-record the answers to their questions. What does this refer to? Do you remember, Diego?
It's probably the question of scheduling guests that don't fit our time slot. So
Yeah,
it's a different
yeah.
experience.
We can try
But
that. We can
yeah,
try that. We
definitely.
can try that. The only problem is they won't be able to answer your questions. So that's the reason why we don't want to do it. Now it's a lot easier to start a podcast. Yes, it's a lot easier.
Do want to preface that with
Okay.
it's a lot easier, but don't underestimate it. Maybe the logistics are there, but It's like starting a company in a sense. Once you start getting traction and growing big, and that's where the hard part comes in. Getting started is good, it's easier, but maintaining it, that will be the true challenge for many.
It's consistency. Here we're doing this on a weekly basis, so we're gonna get in about 100, actually a 50 podcasts a year. That's our goal technically for this year. And when we speak about entrepreneurship, I often tell people you have to sell something for 100 times first before you have a general idea of the what the market is like. It's actually funny because I did want to bring this up. So we reach 100 podcasts of Social Confoes by the end of next year. So with the end of 2020, potentially we'll have 100 episodes of Social Confoes. That's not a lot. It might sound like a lot, but it's not really a lot. And when you get into the YouTubers, I mentioned David Dobrik, but also Casey Neistat, Mr. Beast, go have a look at their YouTube channel and how many videos they've put out. Most of them haven't reached 1,000 videos yet. And this is a very interesting topic, Diego, that I think doesn't get mentioned a lot. I had it with my podcast in 2014. I think I did 4 episodes in total. Um, Other podcasts that started out through the years in Suriname as well, they died down within after like 5 episodes, 8 episodes. They even never got around to a full season. And if you really want to do it correctly, and that's why I respect you a lot for doing it, to have everything on Spotify, have everything on streaming platforms that you can look back at it, getting to like 40 episodes, 50 episodes, that's already really a challenge. And look at the most successful shows. Why do we think that Tapabang Style is such a successful show? It's because it continuously went on. It's still going on. And even though you still have to find a way to keep people engaged after a certain amount of shows, getting there is a lot harder than you think. Just like you said, Diego. Um, if adding value to us in English by Surinamese, if it's adding value to us in English by Surinamese for Surinamese, then you already are on your way to achieve that goal. At least for me, because there are more of us out there. Okay, this is interesting. I haven't looked at it from that perspective, but this is cool. So thanks for sharing that as well, Marlon. And Gregory wants to quickly note that Anthony Nesty should get his respect that he deserves. He should get the Granny for the media should say Anthony Nesty Stadium in our Sport Hall instead of NIS. That's really true. But I think this is an issue in general. This speaks for Anthony Nesty. This speaks for Letitia Friesda. This speaks for Clarence Seedorf. You know how far would have been if we would have given Clarence Seedorf full green light like Dean Correa is getting now. If we would get similar green light for Clarence Seedorf, we would have already had a sports academy. It would have been named the Clarence Seedorf Sports Academy, but who would care? I mean, the guy won the Champions Leagues 4 or 5 times. Give him the granny. Just do it. Make Anthony Nesty or sports Anthony Nesty, for people that don't know it, Anthony Nesty for the last 3 years, he's been regional coach on college level in 2019, regional coach of the year, swimming coach, regional swimming coach of the year in the United States in his division in 2019 and 20 and or actually in 2018 and 2019, and in 2020 Anthony Nesty was the best swimming coach of the total of the United States on college level. Please, we don't grasp that he was the best coach on a college level in the whole United States, and he's coaching in Florida. He's not coaching our national swimming team. And that just goes to show like how, and it's kind of politics as well, that people don't want to give full control to like Surinamese people, that, or at least people with Surinamese roots who have played at the highest level, who had done competitive sports at the highest level. So that's, yeah, that's tough. Um, This is a tough question. Do you re-listen to episodes and reflect on them? I think that's a really good question.
I'll let you go first on this one.
So basically, how we re-listen to the episodes is that we, for to promote the episode, we have to have certain snippets of the episode. So basically, when I heard an episode, I'm gonna go back to specific topics that were discussed. So if there's certain things that Jay said, we all, both Diego and I, knew like we wanted to go on the topic of self confidence because we thought that was a very interesting approach from him. So we will listen to those parts of the podcast, but I don't do full reruns of the full podcast. But maybe when I get Spotify, I should do that a little bit more often. Now that we have Spotify, I think it's a lot easier to re-listen because I can do it in the car. I can do it when I'm doing stuff at home. So I think this is a fair question. How about
Yeah.
you?
So my take on this is from an production standpoint and improvement standpoint. Yes, it is important to re-listen to your own podcast, re-listen to the cringiness of your own voice, um, and also just to understand how flow and structure went. To ask better questions where you've kind of let the ball fall or have to gone deeper, that is only going to help you improve the craft. How it actually happens um, during the editing process. Currently, I do some post editing for the audio only versions that goes to the streaming platform. So in that way, you are kind of forced to listen to back to it, which is good. But I do skim down to some parts when it drags on, and you can once you get the rhythm of how to edit, you kind of start to see the flows and the waves. So yeah, that's one part of it. But yeah, and if I listen to podcasts, especially if it's to review it, I listen to them at 1.5 speed or 1.25 speed. So that's a little hack to save time. But yeah, I think really do think it is important to intentionally listen to, especially some important parts of the podcast to improve.
So the last time I listened to this podcast, I realized that my breathing is very heavy, which I already know, but this mic picks up on it as well. So that's one of the things that I'm struggling with. That's please don't go into it because otherwise you will keep hearing it. Once you hear it, you cannot remove it. So sorry for bursting that bubble. I hope you don't lose followers for that. Sorry about that. But I do have to say that those are the kind of things that you grow conscious of. This, and so in some cases, I will now start turning off my mic in certain cases when I know I'm kind of out of breath or those kind of things.
And yeah,
Um,
those are like production tools, especially when recording. You gotta know your equipment, your mic, how it picks up audio, and the position you place it when recording. So all these things help in that feedback loop. So you can see if in the next episode it improved.
Yeah,
And
but here's the problem. Visually, like I'm moving away from the mic. Visually, it's kind of a distraction. So it's easier to just go like, okay, and now you can't hear me anymore. So that's kind of a way around it, but it's very time consuming. And this is funny because when I worked at Apinti Television 19 years ago. When I had to do the audio for local shows, then you would have to like if somebody's taking a sip of water, put the audio down. You know those kind of things, and that's the biggest difference between television productions, the usual television productions and productions that we are doing now. We're kind of multitasking things that people would have a job for in when it comes to traditional productions. There's one more question, and then we're gonna close off, I guess. Gregory asks, writing and posting story blogs daily or podcasts daily?
so this is another interesting one. So this depends actually on you as a creator. Um, I won't necessarily, yeah, how much into editing you want to go? Do you want to do it raw? So these are things you need to consider. Because, for example, I know Seth Godin writes a post every day for the past, I think, 10 plus years. He hasn't missed a single day of writing a post, however long it is. But he's a writer and That's the consistency he has built. I'm not so sure if I can commit to a daily podcast or writing, but yeah, podcast. I aim for podcast in this situation because that's the space we are currently in. I'm not that much of a writer, so that's my take on that.
But daily though, would you do a
Yeah.
daily podcast? That would be so exhausting.
So daily, you could bring it to, I guess, an Instagram live format of 10 minutes can be converted into podcast. So it depends on your production line or how
Even
you,
that.
yeah.
So I wanna quickly move away from a misconception. And I think for people to understand how daily works, if you're gonna do daily, it has to be really, really, really high on your priority list. And there shouldn't be anything else high on that priority list. So, for instance, daily vlogging, like Casey Neistat did it for 1.5 years. It was kind of the only thing that mattered. So, the reason why daily anything doesn't work for me, because I've done daily writing, I've done daily video, and the reason why it doesn't work for me is there's too much going on in my life. So I'm not able to let go of my company with 30 clients. I'm not able to let go of my family life. There are too many external factors that there is always somewhere around in that month. And I've already had it for the last year. I had it at least 3 times at day 26 that I broke down and I skipped a day. So if you want to go the daily route, it doesn't matter if it's writing or if it's a podcast or it's video. If you're going to go the daily route, you really need to have the commitment and you really need to have it as a priority and basically your sole priority. And if you have it as your sole priority, it works. And yeah, the idea, Stephanie, because Stephanie is now jumping into if you have a team, let's talk like talk shows. Even if you have a team, like you have to have an idea how expensive those talk shows are. You're talking about that the talk shows that have a team of at least 10 people. Even Gary Vaynerchuk, when Gary Vaynerchuk did his live videos, he had a team of 7 people. So if you're gonna go and have a team, and this is not a team that you could just start and do it with your team, it doesn't work like that. Your team still has to get accustomed to the style that you want to post, that you want to write, that you want to create. For me, I have a team also as well of I think 7 people are involved with my social media channels. But certain things I just can't let go because it's a certain writing style, it's a certain way of doing things that you're not easy to let go of. And in the end, it comes back to you. How structured are you? So, and then it's again priority. If you have it as a priority, it could work. John Lee Dumas is a great example who had a daily podcast for 5 years, more than 2,000 episodes published. Gary Vaynerchuk with Wine Library TV also has that. So if we're going to talk team, it's going to have to be a budget. You're going to have a committed crew that you're gonna mold into it. It's a possibility, but you also have to pay those people 5 times what's the average salary in Suriname. So and what's the average salary where you live? So it's gonna be you're gonna have to be either on this level that you can actually afford to pay people because you should pay people to do that work for you because the revenue that you get from it is a lot larger than what you're paying for them. But if you're doing less as an individual, it's total commitment. And I think we did it in 2017. We did the 30-day challenge Suriname. And I think of the 12 people that joined in, 5 did it. And one of the people was Serge from This Is a News. And This Is a News at the time had like 4,000 subscribers on YouTube. And he has over 30,000 now. So it did impact, it did light a fire. But what you have to understand that he already was putting out content for 5 years before it blew up on YouTube.
And that consistency is important. I think if you're going to do like 30-day or daily challenges, once you drop out of that rhythm, that cadence, you'll lose. There's gonna be a dip,
Yeah.
and
So,
you as an individual, especially in high production or at least minimum production creations, um, you need that break as well to recharge, to commit. And in that sense, writing might be easier, shorter, just to keep your mastering of the craft up to par to get those 10,000 hours or those, 10,000 iterations in. So it's something you have to decide for yourself, but daily is a really, really high commitment that you need to consider. So yeah.
Really, really high commitment. I think writing is, it depends. I mean, I actually, with video, I've done it for 1 month. Writing and video both, I've been really close a couple of times, like 4 or 5 times. And it's easy to use the Seinfeld method. I think that's a fair method to use. The Seinfeld method is basically don't break the chain. So you try to produce every day, every day, every day. And then when you miss a day, it's very important that once you miss a day, the next day you pick it up again. If you miss 2 days after each other, it's you're lost. You're out of the rhythm. It's not going automatically away. If you want to read more about it, Diego has read the book, James Clear. So James Clear,
I,
the Steinfeld method. It's a
I
really good
actually
method.
never knew it was called the Seinfeld method. I just remember it as the 2-day rule, but yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the official name, I guess.
yeah. Well, the official name is the 2 day rule, but they call it the Seinfeld method or the Seinfeld strategy is because he wrote his jokes that way. Seinfeld is basically the only television show he stopped. So he wasn't canceled. Actually, he decided after years that he decided to stop his show. And he got really upset for people thinking that he got canceled. But Seinfeld is like one of the few comedy shows that was on air and never went off air until he decided that it was enough. And he would write every day, he would write jokes every day. And that's why it's called the Seinfeld method.
Awesome. I think we've covered a lot. So
Yeah.
let's wrap this up. And first of all, appreciate the interaction, the questions, the comments today. It really, showed us that you guys really are here and kind of, I like how Marlon said it
Mhm.
officially a tribe now,
Yeah.
kind of building this little tribe here. So yeah, appreciate you all showing up every Tuesday and you know having fun with us.
You want to secretly already tell them what it's going to be about next week?
Um,
Or do you want to keep it a surprise until the weekend?
yeah, let's wait till the weekend, but it is something with social media and a very specific platform
Awesome.
that
Awesome.
I don't even
Okay.
have an account on.
Ha! You should get one. I'm going to start posting again tomorrow. So, thank you guys all for watching. Thanks again for the amazing, amazing engagement on the show. That's why we really love you guys. And we'll see you guys next week. Do you want to do a last block for the websites and the channels?
Yeah, as you guys already know, the website is confoes.com. This episode will be released for the audio platforms on Saturday. So check it out on, you can now check it out on Spotify in Suriname, but also on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever mainstream podcasting platform you guys use. So if you got friends who've missed this live session, forward it to them. But anyways, thanks. And that was Social Confoes for the first no second day of March.
Thank you for watching. See you next week. And thank you for listening. See you next time.